Good evening, everybody. It's Wendy Hernandez, and welcome to another Command the Courtroom episode, a live episode. Today's guest is fantastic. I'm so excited to have Julie Hall with us. And let me read, because Julie has a book. Let me get it centered. The Narcissist in Your Life. I can't get it quite centered. Recognizing the patterns and learning to break free. And let me just read the bio, and then I'm going to talk up the book before, during, and after this show. But Julie is an advocate for survivors of narcissistic abuse and the voice behind narcissistfamilyfiles.com. A writer and editor, her articles, essays, and poetry have appeared in Reuters, HuffPost, the Seattle Times, The Nation, the Chicago Sun-Times, and numerous literary journals. She lives in Washington with her family. Thank you, Julie, for being with us tonight.
I'm happy to be here, Wendy. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. And so Julie sent me this wonderful book, which I have been absolutely devouring and learning a lot from. And I encourage everybody to check this out. It's available on Amazon.com, and I imagine like Borders, and I don't know if there's any other place.
I mean, any major book outlets in your independent bookstore in your neighborhood. Yep.
Okay. Yes.
And so it's on Audible too. You can listen to it.
Perfect. So if you are dealing with a narcissist, or you think that you might be, you have to get this book. It's so easy to read and so informative. So Julie's going to shed even more light on the subject for me. And lots of light for all of you out there. So first of all, Julie, can you help us understand a little bit about the narcissistic family system? And I don't know if I used that phrase correctly, but I know that there's okay.
It really is a system. It depends in addition to the narcissist. So maybe would it be helpful if I gave it a little intro about narcissistic personality disorder as a start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So it's a defensive personality structure, and it begins forming in early childhood, really. And so it's basically a child who's having insecure attachment with parents, and different variables can create insecure attachment, traumatic circumstances, parents who are really not able to empathize fully with their kid and sort of provide unconditional love, which is what we all need in early childhood and really throughout our lives to a degree. But so it's a defensive personality structure. It is, so a child forming a narcissistic personality is experiencing this insecure attachment. And as a result, they internalize shame. That's what a child does. If there's something wrong with parents, a child internalizes that and feels there's something wrong with self. And that ensures their connection with those parents, but then it causes all kinds of self-esteem problems. So they're not developing secure self-esteem and a sense of identity. They're repressing those feelings because they're so overwhelming to a small young human. So what they do then is kind of create this kind of grandiose, self-aggrandizing persona that is entitled over others, superior to others. And they often look like bullies at school on the playground, but they're not necessarily obvious either. They can be very covert about their superiority complex, basically. So that child misses numerous developmental milestones. They don't learn empathy. They don't learn to do regular self-reflection and introspective work. They don't learn to see their own emotions and the emotions of others in a nuanced, complete, healthy, complex way. Achieve whole object logical. And I'm losing you. Hello again. Lost you for a second.
Went out. Sorry, you guys. We're having issues. I don't know what's going on, but we said we're gonna try our best, and that's what we
We're
can
going to
do.
try our best. So
Yeah.
thanks for hanging in, everybody. So that child is not they don't learn self-reflection. They don't learn empathy. They see things in very black and white terms. They don't have good emotional literacy. Because of these issues, they either idealize or devalue other people. They see things in black and white. People either are on their side and good guys, or they're the enemy. That's basically how, and that's it's called psychological splitting, and it's built into the personality profile. So they have a hard time holding on to a sense of safe connection with other people when they feel disappointed or hurt or in any way violated by another person. Even the slightest slight can cause the splitting and the sense of rage. And another big part of this too is the lack of emotional regulation. So that's a huge piece of this. They don't have good emotional regulation. And so there's a lot of disorder, there's a lot of rage, there's reactivity, there's emotional volatility, there's kind of a chaotic, so the child forming a narcissistic personality, it becomes more entrenched in adolescence unless there's intervention. And then by early adulthood, it's pretty fixed and very difficult to get out of, because the narcissist has this "I am perfect" defense. So if anybody else has a problem with them, it automatically gets projected back onto that person. If anything is called, if they feel any sense of criticism or questioning of themselves, it's always externalized.
Oh, I lost her, guys. I'm sorry. Dang. You guys just hang in there, and for a minute, Julie froze where she was talking about it's always externalized. So I just want to say hi. Hi, Joni. Good to see you. Hi, Trisha. Of course. Hi, Tenacious. Dustin's Recovery Self-Help channel says you're amazing. Because of you and all I've learned, I was able to rep as my own attorney. I have full custody and sole decision making for her. You're a gift from God. Thank you. That makes me feel great. So hopefully you guys, it won't take too long. Maybe Julie she went out. So hopefully she's trying to get back in. We are not sure what's happening, but there was a weird connection on her end. And it keeps freezing up, and she was going to try to do it by phone. So I'll keep my fingers crossed. Maybe she can go back in, because she is a fountain of information when it comes to narcissistic personality disorder. And I really want to encourage you to check out Julie and her work at the narcissisticfamilyfiles.com. She has some excellent articles there, but this book is worth the $15 or $20 or whatever it was. Especially if you feel like you're dealing with somebody who's a narcissist in your life. Tonight, after she lays the foundation, Julie's going to talk about parenting with a narcissist, the family system, and also the roles in a narcissistic family. And I tell you, I wish that I'd had this book a couple of years ago, because I know that I had some cases where the knowledge could have benefited my clients and myself as we proceeded. So, okay, so I can ask her if she can restart her computer. Let me see. Thank you for that, Tenacious Warrior. So, hold on, you guys. I don't know that I have. We'll just wait for a second and I'll ask her. So I've just chat with you for a minute. Please hang on, because this is going to be a great episode. And I'm curious, from all of you out there listening, do you feel like maybe you're dealing with a narcissist in your life? Is that why you're, that you're wanting to check out this episode? What are the specific issues that you're dealing with? What are your questions? What are your concerns? And let me see if I can get the link for her website. Narcissist. I can't spell it. There it is. And just wait a few minutes, and hopefully she can come back on, you guys. So thank you for being so patient. So I just posted the link there. The narcissist family files.com. And okay, so Michaela is sharing, yes, please share, you guys, what the issues that you're dealing with. And hopefully Julie, when she gets back on, can shed some light on those. And I see more people are joining us, and we're having some tech difficulties. So hopefully Julie will rejoin the chat in a few minutes. I know earlier she was trying to get on her phone. So Michaela is saying that, okay, here she comes. Let's try it again. Hello.
Hi. Sorry about that. I mean, I think honestly, I think my neighbors are using lots of internet right now.
That's okay.
So I'm not sure where we left off, but I was just kind of outlining the narcissistic personality. So they're hyper defensive. They're always protecting the self. And everything is filtered through what's in it for me. Am I okay? I need to prove myself. I need to assert my dominance in whatever situation they're in. So they're extremely dominating in relationships. Again, they can be covert about it, so it may not be super obvious. But what it boils down to for those of us who are in relationships with narcissistic personalities is emotional volatility, demanding unrealistic demands, not any fairness. They're entitled. They have a different set of rules for themselves versus the set of rules they use for everyone else. And they do not validate other people. And that is really the core experience of being around a narcissist is they will not validate us. They may pretend to, they may be subtle about the way that they invalidate us, but we feel it. We feel it, and we feel it in our body, and it makes us sick. So I'm going to stop for a moment and let you, if you want to redirect the conversation.
Oh, I think I appreciate that. And a lot of it is ringing true for me personally right now, Julie, I will tell you, just because as I was talking to you about earlier, I'm dealing, unfortunately, with the situation in my own life where I've just realized that I'm dealing with a covert narcissist. And I realized that in large part because of your book. And it is everything that you're saying is spot on. And this person is checking the boxes. And I have no familial connection to this person, yet it is traumatic. So I can't imagine what people are going through. It's keeping, it's bothering me. It's really bothering me. So I can't imagine when you're dealing with an ex and you share children and how bothersome it can be. So thank you for that background. And, I'd love to talk about, so go ahead.
Well, I was going to get to the narcissistic family. So the narcissistic family is really, it is a system. And so typically there's at least one narcissistic parent, and often there's another narcissistic parent, or there may be a codependent parent who's enabling the behavior of the narcissist. Usually if it's two narcissistic parents, one of them is more overt, more obviously attention seeking, obviously domineering, likes to be the center of attention, very, very controlling. And then the more covert parent may like to play the good guy, may, appear mild-mannered. But they too have the same issues going on where they don't have good emotional regulation. They're prone to rage. They have a very simplistic understanding of their own feelings and those of others. They will not validate other people. And they often boost their self-esteem ongoing by devaluing others. And that devaluing with the covert can be subtle, but it's there and it's persistent and it doesn't stop. And it's all about protecting that unstable self-esteem. And without that empathy, they feel entitled to exploit other people, to violate their boundaries, to hurt other people, perhaps humiliate other people, and maybe even physically, sexually abuse. Certainly emotional abuse is pretty much a given. That's always present because the narcissist is always modulating their self-esteem off of others. So they've got this kind of empty core. There's not that core sense of self. And they're always needing to kind of bounce off who they are and their sort of existence off of other people.
Yes.
So it's a very parasitic kind of personality.
Yes. Okay, I can see that. So tell me, how does that play out when it comes to the children in the narcissist's life? Like,
Right.
are the children often the victims of this sucking or the playing
Right.
off? Can you talk more about that?
Right. So the kids are absolutely in the mix and it is truly tragic when you have a narcissistic parent. They're not empathizing, they're not able to give consistent, if any, real care, emotional caretaking of others. And for a child, and often what happens is the narcissist is fundamentally, they're also two other key pieces of the narcissistic personality is that they are in a state of denial, big time. So they're fundamentally deluded about themselves. It is delusion, classic delusion, where they see themselves as in this grandiose way as better than everyone around them. And so they're always presenting a distorted reality to everyone around them. So, and they insist that other people go along with that narrative, buy into that reality where they're the dominant special one. And everything they say and do needs to be, everybody bows down to that dominant narcissist. And everybody sort of rotates around that personality, that volatile, angry, demanding, unrealistic personality with this grandiose sense of self. And so the kids become, along with that denial, there's also ongoing projection. So the narcissist is constantly projecting what they need to see, what they want to see, rather than looking at a realistic picture. So there's this inner drama between the inflated self, the grandiose self, and the repressed sense of inadequacy, intense vulnerability, and shame. So there's this inner drama going on. And what happens is they basically project those two sides of themselves onto their kids, typically. They do it to other people too, but their kids are right there. They've got access to them and they are receptive, sadly receptive, to this kind of influence from their parents. So they're projecting out a sense of shame and inadequacy onto the devalued child. Typically, there's a child who's being devalued and scapegoated and carrying those negative emotions for the narcissist. And then there's often the golden child who's elevated and who's idealized. And that's what the narcissist wants to believe about themselves. That's what they want to see in their kid. And there's a lot of pressure on that child often to perform. And there's often heavy enmeshment with the narcissistic parent and that golden child, enmeshed child, where that parent kind of engulfs that child and sort of creates a mini me often. And if there are more kids in the family, there may also be, oftentimes there's a lost child, a child who, these are all coping strategies. So kids are just trying to cope with this unsafe, volatile, hypercritical environment. And they know they can't be honest with their emotions. They can't be vulnerable. That's one of the underlying kind of rules in the narcissistic family, is that vulnerability is dangerous and that it leads to humiliation and blame. So sometimes there's a forgotten lost child who withdraws, basically copes by not drawing attention to him or herself, just plays cards close to the vest, doesn't create problems, doesn't draw attention, spends a lot of time alone, isn't a superstar in school, but doesn't isn't having big problems either, because problems draw attention, and so does excelling. So that child just sort of disappears. And then there's often a mascot. If there are more kids, there can be a kind of mascot child who, often the youngest child, who's entertaining, funny, cute, distracting the family from the tensions and problems they're having, from the unhappiness that's sort of an ongoing undercurrent, always there. But the primary roles are the scapegoat and the golden child. And if it's a single child family, that child can play all of those roles on any given day, really. But there's often kind of an ongoing either devaluing or overvaluing of that child.
So, yeah, so I could see how that would put the child on just, like even more of a roller coaster, not knowing from day to day, like, okay,
right,
does he or she like me today or no, not, So, okay, so if in a household where there is more than one child, and I know you reference this in your book, but can the roles change between the child? For example, one day can the golden child be the scapegoat and the scapegoat be the golden child, or what do you see typically there?
Yeah, the roles can shift, and they can shift if the golden child does something. I mean, if the golden child disappoints, they may then be targeted with criticism, disappointment, and perhaps, and if one of the other kids presents well, does something that the family's proud of, and that they derive a sense of status from, if the kid is getting great grades, or if they win a contest, or if they do something amazing, so they may then be elevated. Maybe that'll switch the roles entirely, or maybe it'll switch the roles temporarily. And really, everybody's kind of repositioning, jockeying around, trying to figure out how to survive, because there's this ongoing hypercriticism, there's this intense reactivity, emotional volatility, and there's a real alienation from emotion. There's this tremendous emotional illiteracy in the family. And so the partner, the spouse, may be narcissistic too, or that spouse may be what we call codependent, which isn't the best word, but typically that partner is from has trauma too. So the partner has trauma. They don't have safe, good, clear boundaries, and that's how they get involved in a long-term relationship. Anybody can date a narcissist. Anybody can get involved or meet narcissists, but typically those of us who hang around in the long-term relationships are from trauma. We do not have safe boundaries, and we've been conditioned to accept invalidating behavior and maybe really extreme abusive behavior. And so that enabling spouse who's also carrying trauma and not safe boundaries and thinks that kind of dynamic is normal, that often happens. And yeah, so.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for all of that. So, and I'm just reading some of the comments. There's a lot of comments coming through. People have lots of questions, and they're digging the information.
Awesome. I'm glad we didn't lose everybody.
So a question that I a couple times is, what do we do if we see our kids turning into a narc? I've seen that come through a couple of times where people are afraid that, maybe they're in a relationship with a narc, and they're afraid their kids are going to turn into one. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's a super intense question. And so, the narcissistic family with the narcissistic parent, maybe the second parent or the enabling second parent, is the kind of environment that gives rise to narcissism typically. Okay. So yeah, your kids are at risk for developing a personality disorder. It may not be narcissism. It might be another cluster B, which is borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, which is sociopathy. and histrionic personality disorder. I see these are all the cluster B ones, and they're all very, they all are characterized by high drama and emotional reactivity and dysregulation, and unpredictability, chaotic kind of behavior. And so those 4 personality disorders are in the same family, and they're really, I see them as being on the same spectrum. They have a lot of overlap, particularly the borderline and narcissism. Often a child heavily traumatized by a narcissistic parent or parents will, develop a borderline personality disorder, if not narcissism.
Okay.
So I'm saying the best case scenario usually is to end up as a fairly codependent person. So that person typically will have empathy. That person will be capable of self-reflection. They will be wanting to support the kids and wanting the best for the kids. They are the healthiest version of what comes out of narcissistic families.
Got it. So thank you for that. And I just, as a comment, so I've been sharing all of this information I've been learning from you, Julie, in your book, with somebody close to me. And this person definitely grew up with a narcissistic parent. He's revealed that to me. And interestingly, he's the opposite, but he is just what you described. He's just very empathetic. And but he's described some of the horrors that he endured as a child to me,
Right.
from this parent. And I can tell everybody out there who's terrified that that their kid is destined to be like the narc in their family, but there's hope.
Yeah. So getting back to addressing your question about helping your child avoid this, it's certainly something that you can help support them away from. And if you're seeing some of those patterns, which is pretty common because this is the environment that they're in, these are the models they're getting. So they're either going to kind of come out with enabling codependent behaviors, or often narcissistic, or somewhere kind of a mix. And so really working on empathy is huge. Really working on empathy, helping them stay connected, helping them have stable self-esteem and a sense of self, a sense of capability, helping them achieve a sense of earned success, not something the narcissistic parent says, you're the most brilliant kid in the world. Literally, that narcissists are so delusional. One of my clients I was talking to today, the parent literally said, the narcissistic parent literally told, it was a grandparent actually, told the child that they were the smartest person in the world. And when you say that to a child, an adult saying that is a big deal to hear that. And it's so out of, it's so distorted and hard to manage. And it's actually disempowering, because then that child has this crazy standard for him or herself that no one can live up to.
Yeah.
And it's so much more empowering and giving a child a sense of agency to help them succeed through their own hard work, help them earn that sense of success. That's the kind of ongoing sense of fraudulence that the golden child experiences.
Got it.
So they're feeling like, wow, my parent thinks I'm amazing. I can't do anything wrong. I don't have the same discipline that my siblings are getting. I have special rights. I'm special. But then underneath, they're like, but this isn't my experience at school. People don't seem to see me this way at school and in my friend group. So what's going on here? And they often internalize a sense of fraudulence and lack of self-esteem going on. There is what really is going on beneath that.
Okay. So, and I want to get back to the ways to support our children, but I have a question that one of your comments just raised about, and I read this in your book and I thought it was very interesting, and people might like to know this information. So can you explain why the narcissist promotes this disharmony among the children?
Yeah, really good question. So, and yes, that is so typical, this divisive environment. So the narcissistic person is constantly sowing division. They do not want other people to form alliances. They're threatened by intimacy that other people may have. They're not capable of intimacy because they will not make themselves vulnerable. And they have a very simplistic, shallow sense of what it is to be human, of their own emotions and those of others. So they're really incapable of intimacy. And they want to control everybody around them to sustain that narrative that they're great, that they're flawless, that there's nothing they're doing that's something one could criticize. And it sounds absurd, and it is absurd, but that is the reality that everyone's living with. And so, sorry, tell me again what.
Oh, that's okay. I know there's so much information. So why do they sow this divisiveness against the little kids, the siblings?
Yeah, exactly. So they're threatened. They're threatened by closeness that other people may have. They feel like it's going to detract from their control and their sense of power over everybody. They are so deeply insecure all the time that they need all the attention on them. That's the other thing. And many partners, many spouses of narcissistic personalities see this, where that adult is threatened by attention given to children, even a baby. I mean, they get angry, they're threatened, they may throw tantrums, they may create distracting dramas to get the attention back on themselves. They really are disordered children who never achieved these important psychological, emotional milestones. So they're really stuck in this kind of toddler mentality, this young child mentality. It's all about me. I want all the attention. I want all the resources for myself. And if somebody else is getting attention or credit or resources of any kind, they are angry and threatened, and they want them for themselves. I mean, it's such a primitive view, and that is what is driving that behavior. And as crazy as it sounds, with little kids who are your own kids, that is how the narcissistic parent behaves.
And they have like no idea, like they're delusional. Is that, I mean, they don't understand that they're even doing this.
No, they know right from wrong. They get the same messages we all got. They know right from wrong, but they feel entitled to things that other people aren't entitled to. They feel like they deserve it because they're better than everyone, because they have more entitlement to things. And so they're kind of, the way I see it is typically they're kind of in and out of awareness of these things. Often they're not fully aware. Often they're just reactive. And it's just this kind of conditioned reactive response that's so dysfunctional. But they're also often quite aware that they're hurting other people. They're aware of that. And they're not empathizing. They don't have the empathy going on. And they feel better than others. And they feel threatened all the time, basically. So they feel like anything they do to get their way or get what they want or get the attention is justified. They rationalize it to themselves.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you. So David Lazarco has a great question, and David, I will tell you, buy the book for sure, but maybe we can talk a little bit about it. It says, how can you best defend against the insecure attachment that the narc will induce in the child? What were her specific suggestions for intervention? And I know, there's the chapter in your book about parenting with a narcissist and ways to support your children. Julie.
Yeah. So I do have suggestions about how to manage the narcissistic acts, which I'm happy to talk about. But supporting your child's healthy development, again, it goes back to that self-esteem, supporting their self-esteem and their earned sense of capability and self-worth, validating them in genuine ways, helping them with emotional literacy. Talking about feelings, helping them align with their feelings, because what ends up happening with children is they recognize that the narcissist, the sort of part of the value system or system that's set up is that the narcissistic parent is the only one really allowed to have feelings and needs. And if other people have feelings, that is viewed as a threat. And when a child moves toward individuation, which is the essence of childhood, it's like every step of the way, we're always individuating. We're always trying to figure out who we are, what we care about, what our values are, how to develop ourselves, and eventually go into adulthood as capable people. And the narcissist is resistant to that. They see it as a hostile experience when their children are trying to be independent from them or expressing different opinions. They really believe that everyone should agree with them. And if people do not agree with them, that is a direct sort of attack. And again, they see themselves as perfect. And so if people aren't agreeing with them, then that person needs to be dominated and made to comply.
Okay. So I have a question and I know Joni Ricketts was on here earlier, and Joni is a longtime viewer of Command the Courtroom, and I know over the last several episodes, she's been having questions about telling your children the truth. And I know that's one of the ways that you say you can support your children. And I think she wanted a clearer understanding of how you can tell your children the truth, yet it's walking a line, because the narc is going to accuse you of coaching them or bring it up in court. What are your thoughts on that, Julie, about being truthful with the children without necessarily, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the main struggles that spouses have, especially in these divorce custody scenarios. So, partly depends on the age, obviously the age of the child, but also like on the developmental place where they are and their particular dynamics with the narcissistic parent. It's really important to validate what the kids are going through, because the narcissist is constantly gaslighting them. They're never getting validation. So are they getting? Yeah.
So can you tell us, can you give us an example of how a parent would validate? Can you paint what that would look like, or what the parent would say?
I know your dad hurt your feelings, and that was hurtful. And I didn't like that either. That was hurtful. Are you okay?
Okay.
Or you're actually really good at X, you're really good at drawing, or I really love the way you sing, or, yeah, your father or your mom has trouble when people don't agree with her. But we all have our own thoughts and we all have our own opinions, and that's part of being a person, and that's okay to disagree. Maybe your mom doesn't want to hear it when you disagree with her. So it might be better to not tell her how you're feeling about that sometimes, but you can talk about it with me if you need to. It's a really dicey situation, because some of this is potentially going to get back to that narcissistic spouse or ex, and they are not going to take it well. Right. And it's probably best not to use terms like narcissist.
Yes.
Especially with younger kids. Now, when kids start coming to you with questions, though, what's why did daddy yell at me, or why does he always get angry with me about this when I'm just trying to talk about how I'm feeling, or I was sad today and that made mom really angry, so you can talk about it without the psychobabble language around it, because that's when that gets back, it's usually not constructive. I actually I have a list in my book of language that you can use for talking about these things with younger kids. Right. Where we all have our own thoughts, and that's part of being a person, and we're allowed to have our own opinions and thoughts. We all have feelings, and our feelings are there to guide us. Our feelings tell us what's going on and what we need. And I'd love for you to tell me how you feel. Maybe we could even check in with each other every day and just check in about how we're feeling today, and what were good things that happened today and what were not so good things that happened today. Being real, acknowledging that life is hard at any stage of life. It's often really hard when you're a kid. And, really having that kind of open, ongoing conversation and dialogue. Thank you so much. In tears. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's so important to help kids see reality because they're constantly getting these distorted messages, and they really need to see reality, because if they don't, they're not going to be able to survive well and function well in the rest of the world outside of the crazy family. We
Yeah,
all do that.
exactly. So tell us about one of the things I'm interested in knowing about is, because the narcissist is the way they are with the children, what effect could have tough love have on a child, from the parent who's not the narcissist? And what are your suggestions in terms of tough love? I know I was raised with a lot of tough love. I wasn't raised in a family where there was a narcissist. So, I took it, and it was fine. But, I respond better, I think, to positive reinforcement. But what effect could tough love have on a child who's a child of a narcissist?
Yeah. So, I do say this in the book. I mean, quite honestly, there's nothing harder than growing up in a narcissistic family where you're constantly being gaslighted and invalidated and subjected to ongoing criticism and perhaps other extreme violations. So, tough love is often part of the narcissistic family. Often the parents do that, and the enabling parent often participates in it, sadly. But I don't think tough love has a place. And I think if you know anything about humans, how humans work, or even other animals, you know that positive reinforcement is more successful. Yes, boundaries are important. Absolutely. Boundaries are important. And that's often what's missing in the narcissistic family. Either they're really rigid, too many, or there's lots of, indulgence and lack of structure and security. And honestly, for kids, one of the key things they need from their parents is safe boundaries. They need those boundaries to constantly be adjusted as they get older and more capable. So they need those boundaries to be fluid and adjustable and flexible, but they need them there to feel safe. They need those from us because they don't know the things we know, and they don't have the capabilities developmentally, cognitively, to understand so much of what's going on. So they need our guidance there.
So, and even so say that there's a teen in a narcissistic family who needs those boundaries, but is rebelling and angry and lashing out at the person who's not the narcissist, because that person is like saying, okay, you need boundaries, kid.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that if you're the parent who's not the narcissist?
Yeah. So a child who is really acting out and rebelling is having emotional dysregulation, okay? And they're also pushing for boundaries. Often what that means is they're really pushing to find where the boundaries will be. They need those boundaries. They want them. And that includes teenagers. So teenagers are naturally, developmentally, somewhat narcissistic themselves in a healthy, normal developmental way. They tend to sort of filter things through self more. They often do projection and some denial. Those are normal parts of being a child and a teenager. But they really do still need those boundaries. They need that guidance. And so I see a child acting out. Kids don't want to do that really, because it doesn't serve their needs for survival. They want to stay connected to their parents. That's built into being a child. And so a child acting out more than just sort of typical experimenting and pushing a little bit and figuring out, normal questions about individuating. A child who's really pushing hard at boundaries in ways that are self-destructive for that child is struggling and needs something different from tough love. And that what they need really kind of depends on what the underlying issues are that they're struggling with. But in a narcissistic family, for everybody, low self-esteem is going to be the number one issue.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, and I've had multiple clients over the years, in the position where, one of the parents or the client that I was representing um, was in this situation, where a teen was rebelling and saying, no, I want zero time with you, dad or mom. And so the parent who's not a narcissist is trying to figure out, hey, like, do I continue to fight and try to save this? My kid's 16 or they're 17, they're, on the verge of adulthood. Do I try to save it, or do I just throw my hands up and give up at this point? And I don't know that you can answer that. Each situation is different, but do you have any?
Situation really is different. I mean, the thing that often happens where there's an empathetic, caring parent in the picture, that the children know that parent cares, and they feel more connected and they feel much more safe with that parent. And typically what happens is they'll act out with that parent. So they'll express their anger, and they'll express their questioning and, depression, whatever it is, those negative emotions that they're having. They're not negative, by the way, they're just emotions. But they know that they can't express those to the narcissistic parent, because that parent will most likely become enraged or shut it down, basically, in one way or another. So they go to that safer parent with some of the anger. So that parent often is on the receiving end of more of that. And as sad as that is, it really does reflect the trust the child has with that parent. So it's not fair, but that's often what's going on there.
So
and
I think
it's so important to let that child have those emotions, because they're constantly having to swallow their emotions with that other parent.
So I love that perspective that you just offered, Julie, because I think it would be so easy for a parent to just say, all right, screw you, kid, go with your mom or go with your dad. But if they can look at it a little differently and think, hey, my daughter or my son feels safe with me, and this is why they're acting this way, that's a possibility that maybe that would be helpful to the situation. Just my thoughts.
Hopefully it's reassuring and it helps give some perspective in the situation. It's also important, though, for you as the empathetic parent in the picture, the healthier adult, to have boundaries and to not put up with abuse. So there's a careful, important balance there. Kids need to see you having healthy boundaries, and they haven't seen that because you've been enabling a narcissist. So doing work on you is absolutely critical for your kids. It will help your kids in many ways. So not just in stabilizing the family, but also the better modeling for them.
So when you say doing work on you, what do you mean by that specifically?
Yeah. So, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier about how people who end up in long-term relationships and marriages and so on with narcissists are typically from trauma themselves. They may not be fully aware of it. Often they're not. Or they may have awareness, but they haven't really connected the dots in terms of, okay, I came from trauma. I don't have safe boundaries. I have a tendency to get into abuse dynamics in my relationships, whether it's with friends, a boss, my partner, whatever. So, recognizing your own background, figuring out how you've coped and what your particular coping style is, and how that's played out in your partnership, in your family, and working on yourself, doing the work of, basically what I'm saying is that person typically has complex trauma, and then that's been, magnified by their relationship with the narcissist greatly. So they've come out of trauma, and then they're re-traumatized in this marriage situation, and it's awful. And they need support. You need support as that codependent parent, the other parent in the mix, to help establish healthy boundaries, to be able to say no, to understand what a healthy dynamic is, and get out of these abuse cycles.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So a couple other questions that I have. So it seems from everything that you're saying and what I've read in your book, the narcissist is great at blaming them, other people, and not taking any responsibility. And so how do we deal with this with our children? And I know I have a 9-year-old, and I see how she blames herself for just little things. And I don't believe there's narcissists in my home, but and it really affects her, if she, for example, she, failed the test the other day, and she was just so upset, and she took it to heart. And I can see how that would just be amplified beyond really, comprehension for me in a family with a narcissist. So how can we help the children in these families who are blaming themselves and internalizing it? What are your
and that self-blame, the denial and the self-blame are pretty much written into childhood. They're psychologically written in, right? We do that. We blame ourselves to stay connected with that parent when that parent isn't safe, because our survival depends on staying connected even when it's not safe. So we end up mixing up a sense of intimacy. It's all about attachment trauma. I mean, we mix up a sense of safety and intimacy with danger and abuse. So that's kind of what's at work in that abuse cycle dynamic that we get into. So, and back to what you were asking, I just slightly.
That's okay. How can we help the kids who are just blaming us? What?
So, and that, a lot of that is going to come down to self-compassion. And that is so important because there is no compassion with the narcissist. The narcissist is modeling this punishing, blaming, dangerous kind of situation all the time where nobody is safe to be vulnerable. And it's often, if you're doing things good for yourself, if you're showing yourself compassion, you're often told in various different ways that you're being self-indulgent, or you're selfish, or you're lazy, or whatever it is. Yeah. That's often the underlying message that we get. And really, we all need to be self-compassionate. And that really is a big piece of the healing process coming out of a narcissistic relationship, is recognizing our own human vulnerability. We all have it. We're all vulnerable, and we all have needs, and that's okay. And we actually it makes us stronger when we can sort of fully occupy that humanness, and feel compassion for the self. So helping that child have self-compassion, modeling self-compassion in how you are with yourself as that healthier parent, and responding compassionately to that child, even when that child is emotionally dysregulated, which they will be, because that's the environment they've been raised in.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So modeling, and then just talking to them about it.
Yeah. I mean, emotional literacy, reflecting, having ongoing attunement with self, self-compassion, those are all kind of the keys to moving away from the narcissistic trap. And it is a trap. It's miserable.
It's yes, at best, right? Miserable. So, okay. Yeah. So I have a couple more questions. What is the importance of helping our kids learn to be resilient when they are growing up in a home where there's at least one narcissist present?
Well, yeah. I mean, so resiliency is key in this. I mean, we all have remarkable resiliency. We really do. And we can do things to help support that and develop that resiliency. So and that's a really good question, trying to, giving that child connections with other healthier adults, loving adults who are empathetic, whether they be family members or teachers or coaches or, other people in the neighborhood, like facilitating that so that the kids have a way out, and literally maybe getting them out of the house, giving them breaks from the crazy, from the reactivity, and the sort of tyrannical experience of being in a house with that kind of personality. So, and other, again, going back to helping them achieve a sense of success, helping them achieve self-worth through art, through writing, through music, through and physical activity, sports, lots of things. I mean, if you can help develop in a child that gift of self-confidence and a sense of personal agency, like, wow, I am good at something and I worked hard to get it, and this is part of my core identity, and that's not something anybody can take away from me, I think is a huge piece of that resiliency. So having other relationships that are healthy, that provide perspective, that are, not delusional, like not participating in the delusional dynamic in the family, getting the kids away from the craziness, working on that emotional literacy, really building that in them, giving them creative outlets and giving them the opportunity to be children, because that's what we lose in this, is we have to grow up and we end up caretaking the narcissist when we're children ourselves. And so giving them outlets for expressing the beautiful parts of childhood, which are, playing and being curious and being excited and being creative,
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So I don't know if you know, but since you were talking about it, I posted Jean's comment. She says, do you have any recommendations for any seminars or classes for kids to keep their self-esteem? I don't know if you know anything.
I don't. And that, I've really been struggling with this in general, and it's a really good question. And the whole issue is the thing about this that's kind of the hard thing here is that the child is still really needing to believe that that parent loves them, even when that parent really can't love them, where that love is entirely conditional. Yeah. And that is a very hard thing for a child developmentally to get their head around. Like, it's super threatening and destabilizing for so many kids. Yeah. However, some kids, like especially in their teens, get to a place where they already know that. They know it. And they're ready to have it validated. And so they could read a book like my book. They could read it. And in fact, I've had quite a few teenagers who have told me that the book has helped them enormously. So giving them information about personality disorders, helping them understand human psychology, helping them understand what is involved with attachment, these are basics that should be part of curriculum every year in school. Yes. And they're not. And it's crazy that they're not.
I agree. So Alita is saying such a useful book, and I agree. It's such a useful book.
Thanks, Alita.
So, and there's like so much more. I think Julie and I could go on for probably weeks on this. But I just want to tell you all, like, she has very specific ways in this book and phrases, that you can talk to your children about, ways to help your children cope with the various family roles, help for the golden child, for the hero and scapegoat, help for the lost child, protecting the kids from codependency. I mean, it's chock full of information that everybody on the stream must know, because if you're listening to this stream, there's a reason. And one of the things that I thought was really helpful was, Julie, you said, forget co-parenting and accept parallel parenting.
Yeah. So like quickly to go over kind of strategies about how to manage that X. So often, because of our own traumatic background, we are in this conditioned response with a narcissistic kind of personality where we're explaining ourselves, we're justifying ourselves, we're looking for that validation that never comes, and we get into this defensive posture where we feel like we're defending, and we are, and because we're really under attack really all the time. But the key here is that, it only makes it worse if you try to explain yourself or try to justify yourself. The narcissist doesn't care. They don't care, and they're not thinking about things or feeling things the way you are. They're just not. They don't have that empathy piece. They're not self-reflecting. They're not taking responsibility. They're pivoting away from responsibility constantly. Yeah. So we often project our feelings onto them too. But we have to remember that they're not operating the same way. They're not feeling the same things. They see things in really black and white terms. And they're not, I mean, they can be perceptive about what other people are feeling so that they can manipulate, but they're not doing that emotional connecting. Understanding co-parenting, not an option. Yeah, I mean, that's totally true. So this person said you must parallel parent with an NPD and understand co-parenting is not an option. It is true. We keep thinking, many of us make the same mistake where we're like, okay, I just have to figure out how to explain this to him or her in a way that they'll finally understand. And they do want the best for our kids. I know, they just can't show it. No, they don't. They want the best for themselves. I'm sorry to say that is the bottom line here.
Yep.
Now, they may be capable of doing good things for the kids. They may be fun. They may be creative. They may be tuned in. They may really love feeling like a good parent. So they may have good things to bring to the relationship, but it's always on the condition that it's something they want to do that makes them feel good about themselves. So they have to align. It has to align with what they want. And if it doesn't, they're not interested.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, quickly, I'm going to say, don't explain yourself. Don't try to defend yourself. Don't react to their antagonism. They're always going to try to antagonize you because it's going to become about winning. It's going to become about beating you and getting the better of the situation and dominating and getting their way. They're not thinking about the kids. They're not really capable of thinking about what kids need, usually.
Okay. Yes. And so, yeah, some other things on the to-do list, and or don't list. Don't argue. Don't make yourself vulnerable. Don't share personal info. Don't react to barbs or criticisms. That's a hard one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's so essential.
It's so essential.
So it goes back to working on yourself, getting more secure in yourself so that you're not reacting to the crazy, because then you get drawn back into it and it's just going to end badly for you and the kids.
Okay, excellent. Don't internalize the projections. And you guys, I'm not going to read all of these. I'm just saying, like, buy the book. Please buy the book.
And you can go to my blog too. I mean, I'm a writer. That's my training. That's my background. And so I have all these articles on my website that you can read. But they're all really all of the information is put together in a comprehensive, cohesive, and clear way in my book. It's all there. And so, I do recommend the book.
Yes. I recommend the book highly. It's easy to read. Like, I've tried reading some other books on narcissism and not all that easy to read. I'm sure great information, but this one is it's easy reading. And the way it's organized is really good. There's a lot of checklists or numbered bullet pointed lists, and it really kind of helps me compartmentalize and understand things, and really it's caused the light bulb to go off my head because of a checklist. So the blog is the Narcissist Family Files. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. And the book is really about the narcissistic family. And it's for those of us who are in narcissistic relationships in adulthood. We're typically out of trauma ourselves. It's all about trauma. And it really outlines, how the narcissistic family works as a system. And it really does work as a system. And it works, at all levels of society. I mean, it's like a cult. It really works like a cult.
Oh, wow.
And, whether it's institutionalized in a nation, a government, whether it's in a community, a school, a church, narcissism begins in the home, and it then gets institutionalized in larger kind of communal organizations.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been great. It's been informative. I've loved talking with you about this. And there was a lot of people on this live stream tonight, almost 100 people at times, which is a lot for me. And I know a lot of people will watch the replay and probably watch it again and again. So thank you guys so much.
And you can, I also am a coach. I coach people I know a lot about trauma, and I I am a coach, and you can reach out. I'm not actually taking new clients at the moment, but I do have a wait list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So if I were going through this, I'd want Julie as my coach. I can tell you that. So get on the wait list.
Well, you know, the thing is, I've been there. I mean, I've been there, and I know from firsthand experience. So cool.
Oh,
Thank you, people, for your comments. It's really nice.
yeah, lots of nice comments. Joni is saying thank you, and Rebecca is saying thank you. Ken is
Welcome.
saying thank you. So, and there's Kendra saying bring Julie back soon. So awesome. Thank you, Julie, so much.
Thanks so much, Wendy. It was really a pleasure. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk. And yeah.
Well,
Invite me back. I'll talk more. I can talk endlessly about this.
I would love to. I will take you up on that. And it's been such great information. Thank you for spreading your knowledge. So to all you out there watching tonight, you guys have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful week. Actually, I won't be here next week because it's President's Day week and I'm taking a night off, but I'll have a pre-record. Yeah.
We all need to do that.
We all need to do that. It's part of self-care. So Andrea is saying buy the book. She is a longtime listener. So I will have a pre-recorded video interview coming up next Monday, you guys, but we'll be back the week after. But until then, you guys remember, you guys got to keep on trucking and get out there and command the courtroom. Give this a thumbs up. I know you liked it. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Check Julie out, and I'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye, everybody.